Okay, we're heading on home, and I've got my McDonald's. And I got a tweet while I was waiting at McDonald's from them to put the things together. I got a tweet from Aki Drama Queen, aka Total Drama Queen over on YouTube, asking about the condition of old people in Japan. Are they well cared for by the young, or are they put into, they cared for at home? Basically the question was, are they cared for at home, or are they put into nursing homes? And I can only speak with any certainty about my own experience in the United States, so I'll use the United States as a comparison. In the United States, it's not uncommon for old people to, as many of you know, it's not uncommon for old people to wind up in a retirement home, a retirement village, a nursing home, a convalescent home, whatever the case may be. But most old people actually, in my experience, many old people, I worked in a convalescent home, so I had a chance to talk to a lot of old people. And many of them told me they don't want to inconvenience their sons and daughters. They would actually prefer to be in that type of situation. Also, there's a key element of the sense of independence. Older people sometimes feel they've lost their, in America, they feel they've lost their independence when they find themselves living with their kids. So there's a lot of reasons why old people in the United States may wind up in a home versus living at their home with their children. Now in Japan, the ideal case, here's the ideal scenario that all Japanese families strive for. I should say not all, but it's the ideal. The ideal scenario is that a family has mom and dad have children, and their oldest son, let's say they have 4 or 5 children, which was the typical several generations back, bigger than that even. The oldest son would basically inherit the mantle of the household, and inheriting that mantle, that he would have the requirements to stay at home at the family homestead, take over the family business, become the head of the household eventually, and care for his parents as they got older. Or actually, more accurately, his wife would care for his parents as they got older. As a man, his duties are more limited to head of the household, running the business, taking care of stuff like that. Anything that's domestic will be handled by his wife, so the woman married into the family. That's the ideal scenario. So old people in Japan, when they wish to think about their future, most of them are hoping that they'll be safely cared for by their daughter-in-law in the household of their son, which is the same house where they raised their son, and then that lineage would pass from generation to generation. That ideal was in fact very often the case 2 generations back and further. Recently it's becoming less common as the nuclear family, the image that has been carried over from Western influence, that nuclear family has become the new ideal in many cases, and old people are indeed winding up in retirement homes. Sometimes it's not because of the ideal. Sometimes it's that way because of convenience. For example, I know a family here that the children, 2 daughters, moved away to Tokyo and got married and established their families there. The parents were left here in Shizuoka, and I actually knew them pretty well. They had a house downtown. And when they got too old to fend for themselves, take care of themselves, they didn't want to move to Tokyo. They want to stay in Shizuoka. That's where all their connections are. So they basically volunteered as a couple to enter a retirement home where they could be together, be close people, their friends could visit them, their extended family, they'd be in the place they spent their whole life. They ended up dying in that retirement home within months of one another, and their daughters were living very far away. So there's an example where of an exception to this ideal in Japan. So in summary, in Japan, the old people and the young people dream, for the most part, of a united extended family under one large roof, with the old people being cared for by the young. The reality is that that's only sometimes the case, probably the majority though, and in many cases old people live alone. In fact, we just passed a house where there's an old woman that lives all alone. I see her almost every day. She's very lonely, and she has no one really to talk to. She talks to me a lot, and she loves to give Emily Ju-yen coins. Can't stop. Whenever we see her on the street, she reaches into her pocket. She must keep a pocket full of those 10 yen coins, which are worth about 8 cents, and she always pawns one off on Emily. And I try to get her to stop, but there's no way. She seems to dig it. So there we go. Okay, speaking of old people's houses, there's my in-laws' house right there, and what a great fitting way to end it. And so let's finish with our example. We came to Japan. One of the reasons we came here was to be close to Yumiko's parents, to be near them in their daughterage, and we're looking at their front door right there. And since we came to Japan, we have been struggling to get closer and closer. We can't live with them. The house isn't big enough or designed for that. They already have two adult children living with them. We live after 3 moves in 8 years, strategically getting closer every time. We live right here. This apartment building is ours. Very, very close. It's about as close as we can get. We live in a very small place because it's the best we can find to be this close. But the folks are going to need us in the years ahead, so there we are. So that's our solution, and just one example of how it's done in Japan. I hope that answers your question, Aki Drama Queen. Hope you all have a great day and a great week. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.